let me tell you.
Probably a good thing, Diane.
You may be right, you may be right. Paul graduated from the University of Toronto in 1978 with majors in biology and psychology. He has numerous diplomas from George Brown College and the University of Southern California, Berkeley. He also has certification in financial planning. Paul worked for the City of Toronto in water supply, starting in production and treatment. He retired after 32 years while being responsible for the managing of the distribution system. He has been running an after-school club for children grade ages 3 to 7 years old for the last 35 years. Some of the children have special needs. At other times, he also teaches the teenagers. He's a Bible scholar with a special interest in the Old Testament. Paul has sailed for over 50 years on many different boats. He has his advanced certification and was a CYA International Sailing Instructor. He now mentors newer sailors at Lakeshore Yacht Club. Currently, he sails a 7.7 meter Bavaria yacht, which he has been fine-tuning for 12 years. He is almost finished with the work. In 2017, Paul helped deliver a boat from New York to Toronto. Today, Paul will give us his impressions of the 4 C's of Israel, among other impressions he derived on a recent trip to the Holy Land. Please give Paul Lamont a warm welcome.
Israel. To me, Israel is a fascinating country that I've read about a lot, heard about a lot, and just had to go and visit. And when I went to Israel, I wanted to see as much of Israel as I could. Not just the area around Jerusalem. And I was fortunate enough to find a company that would actually allow me to do that. So basically we flew into Tel Aviv, which is over there. We were able to go all the way to the very north of Israel. We have Lebanon here and Syria here. And then all the way down past the Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea, all the way down to Elat, which is on the Red Sea. And then back around and back up. The interesting thing about, many things are interesting about Israel, but if you look at all the purple and gray areas, this is the Gaza Strip, this is another area. These areas are controlled by the Palestinians as opposed to the Israelis. So it's kind of a blended country depending on where you go, and it may be worth your while to be careful where you go. So Israel, as I said, was very fascinating to me. This picture is not a picture that I took, but I just want you to remember this boat, because we will be talking about a boat similar to that during the presentation. I would suggest to you that this is more like the New Testament boat that we read about, where Peter was out there, and Jesus was out there, and stuff like that, as compared to another boat that we will see. Israel is a very small country, actually. It would fit in the area of New Jersey, and it's 74% Jewish and only 2% Christian. And there's many other groups that are there as well. Israel is real. It is a country. It is a nation. Israel's history is real. I've read about it my whole life. But to be there and actually see some of the places, you read this, okay, there it is. You read this, oh, there it is. That to me was absolutely amazing. To read or to see the places where I read. Doing something wrong here. There we go. Israel's future is also real. And that's also absolutely fascinating to me. There's a lot of prophecies about Israel in the past and where Israel is going to end up in the future. One of our first stops was in Caesarea, which is just north of Tel Aviv. This is the amphitheater that was used. This whole complex, this whole area of Caesarea, which is also known as Caesarea, depending on whether you're Jewish or more Roman, was an area that was very important in the scriptures anyways. We read about Paul making his defense. He was in there a lot making his defense. He was before Felix, he was before Festa, he was before King Agrippa, before he was in prison. Now this was the area that Pontius Pilate was the curator of. And back there was the stone, that's a replica of the stone that's in the Israel Museum. That basically says Pontius Pilate, curator of Caesarea. So we know that Pontius Pilate was a real person, and he was the curator in that area when Paul was around, and also in the time of Jesus. This is the interior, part of the interior of the amphitheater that was there, the theater. Now we'll go to next picture. That there, you'll see a bigger picture in a second. That there is the bema. That is the area. These are the stairs coming up from the floor of the amphitheater, or the theater. And this was the place of honor, right there. That's where King Agrippa would be. That's where Felix would be. It was also called the bema. This is where a judge would be. If a judge was presiding over a case, this is where the judge would be sitting, right in that spot right there. There's a larger view of the bema right there. And some of these stones that are over here and probably in the next picture, are actual stones from over 2,000 years ago. They've been excavated, and those are the actual stones that were laid over 2,000 years ago, which is kind of interesting to me. Now this is a area outside of the amphitheater. This town, or this area of Caesarea, was very important. This is an area that Herod himself built up. You can sort of see the harbor there. We'll see it more in a minute. But there's everything you can think of here. This is the Hippodrome, which held 15,000 people. That's where they would have the chariot races. That was there. This was a tower for defense. And it reaches up over here, and then the city itself is down here. There you can see the harbor a little bit better. That's the old harbor. The new harbor is on the other side of that tower. And this, as I said, was built by Herod for his defense. And this was one of the areas that he would keep his ships when he went out to do raids along the Mediterranean. This is still part of the Mediterranean. That's another picture of the Hippodrome where the chariot races were on. This is the aqueduct, the part of the aqueduct that produced water in it. You know, water is very important. And the tower for defense. And then this was one of his palaces. There's another shot of the aqueduct. The city was over here, the Mediterranean is on the other side of that aqueduct. Now, a thing that was always present, or what I always felt when I was in Israel, is a state of readiness. No matter where you were not far from defense forces whatsoever. This is a sign for a bomb shelter. On an average, if a missile is coming in, people have 11 seconds to find a place of shelter. So you will find these all over the place. But especially for children, do I care about? What kind of a life? Sure.
Did they do any rehearsals or practice with you while you were on tour?
No practices, no rehearsals. I think our guides were very, very careful, and literally daily they would have briefings to say, okay, where are we going to go today? Because it was a general idea of where we were going to go, but sometimes we had to change those plans and go to other places. Everything just in through here is what I found is the Shabbat elevator. That's an elevator that's used on the Shabbat, which is Friday night to Saturday night. And it automatically goes to every floor. So you just walk in, the door opens automatically, you walk in, and you can go from door to floor to floor to floor. That way you don't have to do any work because you don't have to push any buttons. This is another one. This shelter was in a kibbutz that we stayed at. That's a shelter for the adults, but if you notice here, children's club. The shelter was in the children's club, so that I assumed the children would be protected. But that's where they went. That's where the kids were, and it would be a lot easier to protect them that way than having to load them up and take them to another area. Again, this is near the Knesset. Sorry, the picture is not as bright as it could be. My camera was not really great. This is a guard station, just there. Just the Israelis just ignore it, like it's not even there as far as they're concerned. I'm like, whoa, okay. And you're trying to be really polite and be on your best behavior when you're around there. But yeah, they have people there all the time. They are in bulletproof vests. They have loaded guns, and they're definitely there. But they're also very friendly. That's not even an issue. But again, I think they're very vigilant. Here we are. We're at another stop on the bus. And hey, can we get your picture? Sure. So there they are. There's your loaded guns. And they're there. I believe the males have to enlist for 3 years. The girls only have to enlist for 2 years. But 1 month out of every year, you're back in the Army as a reservist. So the whole economy is based on working 11 months of the year and being in the Army for 1 month of the year. But if the Army is your career, then you're going to be there a lot longer. But you see, they're young kids. They're young kids that are doing this. This is Tel Aviv, not too far away. When they talk about the mountains are really just hills. They're not really mountains. We'll see we go from a very high elevation on this tour to a very low elevation, but the actual climbing in any particular area is not that much. This is supposed to be the site of when Jesus taught the Beatitudes. So here they are, they're sitting up on the hill and have a beautiful view. Obviously Tel Aviv wasn't there, but that's the Mediterranean. It's just a beautiful area wherever you went, as far as I was concerned. There's another shot of Tel Aviv and the Mediterranean. Of course, there's the yacht club. This is in Tel Aviv, and I had to get a picture of that. I tried to get in, but was not successful. The ceramics or the mosaics that are there from a couple thousand years ago, it's just absolutely amazing that they had the technology and the ability to do that, and that they've been able to preserve that. Israel is a country that's changing all the time, in the sense that cultures are built on top of cultures, which are built on top of cultures. So the word tel basically means a hill or layers of civilization. So Tel Aviv is the hill of Aviv, where there are many, many cultures. And archaeology is very big there. And the man I went with was an archaeologist. And these are some of the findings that they have uncovered. Jaffa, otherwise known as Joppa. Again, it's still on the Mediterranean. This is the Mediterranean down here. A lot of significance in scripture about Joppa as well. This city is like 3,500 years old. It's named after Japheth, the son of Jonah. It was a chief seaport in the time of King Solomon. Now, Lebanon, as I said, is up here. Joppa is around here. The cedars from Lebanon were brought down to Joppa and floated onto the Mediterranean and taken down to Jerusalem for the first temple. So this was a very important city because of that. And that was in the time of Zerubbabel. Jonah, as in Jonah and the whale, this is where he left on his ill-fated journey, was from Joppa. Dorcas lived there, and I think I have a picture. There's some more ceramics. And there's Simon's home. Simon the Tanner, very famous man. This is actually a house that is being lived in. It's allegedly over 6,000 years old, and thought to be the actual house of Simon the Tanner. Because of us tourists, they can't use their front door anymore. They have to go, they have a gate around the side, go through a guard to get into their own house. Because of us people. And again, there's a lot of narrow roads. There's the Jaffa Harbor. Again, this was used by defense over the years. It's not really that big of a harbor, but it was a fairly deep harbor. But I think it was Herod was worried about other people coming in and attacking the land, so he filled it with rocks along here. This is all full of rocks now, so that the ships can't get in. But I think they did leave a small area where people who were living there knew how to get out. So it could still be used for defense and offense, but this is the Jezreel Valley. It's also going to be the place of Armageddon. Jezreel Valley is further up here. Now there's something very interesting in this picture. You may or may not be able to pick it out. This is actually a valley. Jezreel Valley was a valley where many battles over the centuries have occurred. And this is an area, I believe, the Six-Day War and also the War of Independence was fought in this area. The significant thing to me, that you're actually looking at an airport. That there are the two runways for the military aircraft. All the aircraft are underground, are brought up from underground in the bunkers, and they fly it from there. Interesting thing is that this is, as I said, it's in the north part of Israel. It takes 6.5 minutes to fly from the north of Israel to the south. 6.5 minutes. Once the plane is launched. As I said, it's not a big country. So being in a state of readiness is understandable. Also prophetically, this is going to be the area, it's over 200 miles long, where the final battle is going to be fought, where all the nations are going to be fighting against Israel in a war that cannot be won. But the Israelis are going to prevail. And after that, there's going to be peace. Revelation. Book of Revelation. And I believe it. Matter of fact, I believe it so much that I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in my lifetime. This is the same valley, just looking at it from a different angle. As I said, it's a large area. And this is going to be a terrible, terrible, terrible area to be in times to come. Now we're way up in the north. We're not quite at Mount Hermon, but we're up in this area here. There's Syria. And this is reclaimed land that used to be Syria, that the Israelis now own. So these are actually the actual Syrian bunkers that were used, and now the Israelis have it, and they just put these silhouettes in just to give an illustration as to what was going on. You can see the trenches down through here. This is another area, there was a gun there, things like that. Basically, when you're here, you're looking out over, this is a fairly elevated area, as in the previous pictures. You're shooting into Syria, or conversely, Syria is shooting into Israel. And this is the area I believe that the Syrians are now trying to bombard again over the last month or two. They're bombarding this area and trying to cause as much trouble as they can. There's one of the gun mounts here for a gun. Of course, there's the ubiquitous souvenir shop. Gotta have that. That's one thing I wouldn't mind getting bought. I didn't say that, did I?
No.
Okay. More trenches. These go down to underground tunnels. It's not just the bunkers that are up on the ground. You can actually go down, and there's a whole labyrinth of tunnels through there where they can move equipment, resources, whatever, around in that area at the top of the mountain, or they call it a mountain. And not a lot of room down there, but there's rooms. There are actual rooms, maybe the first set of tables that size. I should have brought my own headset. Again, this is the Valley of Tears. This is where a lot of the wars had occurred. That's Syria. That's how close we were to Syria. It was just separated by this valley. We're up on a mountain, and there's another other mountain there. That's what the Israelis have to look at if they live up in the north. The Israeli flag is there. That's the Jordan River. Jordan River goes basically from the Sea of Galilee, even further north of the Sea of Galilee, actually down here, then continues down through the central part of Israel into the Dead Sea. But there's no exit to the Dead Sea. It is extremely salty, to the point where if you get one drop in your eye, you are in pain and you are getting out and you are flushing it out as quickly as possible. It is that salty. Actually, we'll get to the Dead Sea a little bit later. Anyways, that's the Jordan River coming down. Jordan River, for the most part, is now a trickle. Simply because there's so little rain there that they're using as much water as possible for agriculture and for domestic use as well. But the other problem is that the water is being replaced by waste. So the lower Jordan River is very high concentration of human and industrial waste. The bacteria count in there is incredibly high. I know some people go there and some people go in there, but I don't think you would ever catch me doing that. And I would always ask, oh, but you did that? Okay, you were in there? Well, did you get sick? Because it's nasty. But then I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective to what many other people might look at.
So does that waste all also end up in the Dead Sea?
I would say yes. Yes. But they didn't really talk about it down in the Dead Sea. I guess to a certain extent there's biological metabolism going on. But up in the central part, the pollution count in the Jordan River is unbelievably high. Unbelievably high. That's just an aside. Gideon had to choose an army to go against their enemies. This is one of the areas, this is part of the Jordan River as well, but this is where Gideon had to pick his people. And he went down from about 10,000, something like that, to 300 people. That's the actual pool where the soldiers drank. And how they drank determined whether or not they got to go to war. It's now turned into a shrine of idols. I don't know if I have that picture there or not. Yeah, this is,
Paul, can you speak into the microphone?
okay, I'll try. Yeah, there they are. That's just beside that pool that I was showing you. These are all shrines to idols that have been built over the years, and it's allegedly a fairly popular pilgrimage to go to this area for that. There's a lot of Old Testament history there as well. This is oh yeah, Boaz. Good old Boaz. Story of Ruth and Boaz. Again, from the scripture, we talk about in the story. It says, well, he had to go to the gate, and we have great ideas of what this gate would look like, and it must have been really a posh place. Well, the seat of government is right there. That's the seat of government, which was in the gate. Now, gates, oh yeah, we'll talk about this. Gates, when we read them, I have an idea of two doors that open. In old times, a gate was a large area which had a lot of different things in it. Before we got to this part, there would be an area that would be an uphill area that would be full of rocks, so that any invading army that would come in with their horses would be slowed down dramatically because of all the rocks, and they couldn't get in. And then the gate was basically the merchandise area. That's where the shops were. So, and also the seat of government was there. So here we're looking at going up through the gate. You can see how rough it is. And on either side, first of all, it's a zigzag. It's not straight. It's a zigzag, again, to keep the chariots and the horses and the soldiers from having quick access. And it gives the people in the town a bit more time to prepare. That's more of an aerial view. These are some of the shops along the way. And now we're getting close to the top. We're coming up through the gate, up this way, up and around, and up to here. This is where the city is. It's up there. After they've gone through the gate, which takes quite a while to get from the entrance of the city, through the gate, through all the shops, through the zigzag, up the hill to the actual town. That's a storage area. You're actually looking down at a fairly large storage area where grain or whatever we kept. Now we're up to Mount Hermon. This is the very, very north. And so far north it's underneath this cliff, way up there. And again, you have Lebanon on one side and you have Syria on the other side. This is just an area. This is the mountains, and again, oh, it's not this picture, maybe it's the next picture. So there's snow in Israel. We're now 1,165 meters above sea level. And that's not at the top of the mountain. That's where that other picture was taken. So the mountain itself is significantly higher than that. So this is probably the highest level that we were at during our trip. Was 1,165 meters above sea level. And of course, souvenir shop. Millstone. Figs, olives, very popular there. This is an olive press. That press is probably 2 meters high at least. And this pole was attached to a donkey, and there's basically a big bowl, and the donkey would go round and round, and that would cause that wheel to rotate and crush all the olives. And then you get olive oil out of that, and many other products that they make there. There's an olive tree inside the store. Olive tree outside the store. Sycamore tree, also very popular. Now we get to the Sea of Galilee. When I read about the Sea of Galilee and the great waves and winds and storms and things like that, I thought it was really big. It's not that big. You're looking across the Sea of Galilee. It's only 13 miles long. And it's about 7.5 miles wide at the widest part. And if you were to walk around the outside, it would be 32 miles. It's
Microphone.
Let's try this one. Interesting thing is, the Sea of Galilee is below sea level. So we've gone from Mount Hermon, which is over 1,000 meters above sea level, to the Sea of Galilee, which is 682 feet below sea level. And it's about 84 feet deep and 64 square mile surface. So the Sea of Gennesaret, Sea of Tiberias, it's all the same place. Some towns around there are Tiberias and Capernaum. This is where the fish were caught. And the disciples, this is the sea that the disciples fished on. This is out on the Sea of Galilee. Amazing, amazing little trip. Out on the Sea of Galilee. It's getting to be evening. The sun is going down. These are some boats. This was the boat that we were on. They call them Jesus boats, but I think they were way too big for the time when 2,000 years ago. But you go out on there and you sing, you dance, and you just have a great old time. So this is, if you go out, and those that have been will probably recognize that idea from the front. That's Tiberias, the town of Tiberias, which is on the west side of the Sea of Galilee, which is over here. Again, as I said, it's getting dark. You can see the lights coming up. Fairly large town. Lots of seagulls. I don't know how we got that. But it was mostly a Canadian contingent of people who went, and some Americans. So, the flags were up. Typical house, a couple thousand years ago. It's 2 rooms. Room 1, room 2. This is the room where everybody slept all together. Kids were there, adults were there, grandparents were there, whoever was living. That's where they slept, all together. And not really a large area, as you can see from the scale of the person who's standing there. Again, a slightly different view. This is the other room. This is the door coming in is over here. picture, I took a picture of a picture. Oh, 200 years ago, some guys were walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And just happened to kick something and didn't really know what they were looking at or what they had kicked, but it looked unusual to them. So they picked it up and they took it back and got a hold of some people that were more knowledgeable. They found out that they had found an old sea vessel that used to ply the Sea of Galilee. And over the next several years, they excavated that. They actually coated it with foam to get it out of there and brought it to a museum. And that's basically what it looks like in the picture. This is all supporting structure around it. But that's the actual boat. That's my picture of the boat.
How long is it?
15 feet. I think it was 15 feet. No, 26 feet long and 8.5 feet wide, 4.5 feet deep.
Interesting.
But you can see, looking at the scale of the people to the boat, this is more likely the type of boat that was used 2,000 years ago, as opposed to the other boat I showed you. And that would be a fishing boat. People would go out in that, no matter what the weather was like, high waves, high winds. They were able to row it and did their fishing, did whatever they needed to do. If they needed to go across the lake, that would be the boat they would use. Now, rowing that boat 7.5 miles across at the widest spot would be a little bit of a challenge in the best of times, but I found that interesting. It's not as clear as it could be because it's inside a building and it's somewhat low light because they're trying to preserve it. That's another shot of the boat, looking at what I believe is the stern. And this is another shot I got off the internet. Set in. 4,000-year-old city, was a Palestinian city. In the time of King Saul. Yeah, this town was around in the time of King Saul. This is a model of it. And again, a very civilized city. You've got the amphitheater here, you've got another theater here, there's or places of worship around and the people. And it was very, very developed. Another place of worship over here. No, it was not walled when we were there. This is it. It's sort of I guess there is sort of a wall around it. But this is where the shops would be. And that was one of the theaters back in there. Modern engineering here. This is the main street where all the shops were. It's on 2 different levels. This level here, where all the shops were, is higher than the center section of the street, and then on the other side there's more shops. Why did they do that? Close. The center section is where all the horses and donkeys went, and you didn't want to get your feet dirty. So you were able to walk along here, and even if it was raining or whatever, or had rained, you stayed clean. And these were all covered over. These are the pillars that it was actually roofed here at one time. So. This is another view of the same city. Again, it's a very large area. It's one of the best excavated places in Israel, I understand. There's the main street again, with the shops on either side. And then Any idea what that is? It's a public place. Oh, you're getting closer.
The new.
It's the loo.
No wonder you're so good.
Well, I mean, it was not that open really, because you're all wearing togas and such like that, and you just pull them up and sit down. It was also co-ed.
And that's the trough behind it.
Yeah, and the trough underneath took away the waste. So, everything that is old is new again. This is the subfloor of the sauna. Very opulent, that's the word. Opulent area. Back here is where all the fire was built. They had slaves, and the slaves would feed the fire, and steam would come out underneath this floor, and that's where you went to have a sauna. And it is large. It is very, very large. Here's another section of it. And you can sort of see feet there of people, so it gives you an idea of the scale of it. Again, more of the town. Now we come to Jerusalem. Right there, somewhere. This is actually the Mount of Olives. This is probably the area where Jesus was when he left over Jerusalem. This is, "Oh, Jerusalem, I wish you would follow me. I wanted to gather you as a hen gathers its chicks under her wings, and you would not." How the Israeli people had turned their back on God. That's the wall of Jerusalem there. And that's that Mount of Olives, where Jesus was supposed to have left the earth and will return to the earth. It's from the Mount of Olives. It's also the area which we'll get to shortly, in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, again, it is on a hill. Mount Moriah is on a hill. There's many hills in this area. And you can see all the switchbacks trying to get up. There's a bus there trying to get there. The Eastern Gate is a very important gate. That was the gate into the temple, which is where the Dome of the Rock is now. That was the location of the first and second temple. And to get into the temple, you had to go through the Eastern Gate and up to the temple. Since then, it's prophesied that the Messiah will return, and he has to go through the Eastern Gate to get to the temple that's not there right yet. But we'll get to that in a minute. But the interesting thing is that this is a Muslim cemetery in front of it now. So according to Jewish tradition, a priest, especially a high priest, could not be defiled by going through a cemetery. So how's the Messiah going to come back through the Eastern Gate if the cemetery's there? I don't know the answer. I have an idea, but I don't have the answer. That's a little bit closer view of the Eastern Gate. This is the southern end of the Temple Mount. This is an area where the population would come up to get into the temple courts, not into the temple itself, but into the temple courts. It was also an area where teaching was done. It's alleged that Jesus himself taught there, and Paul, when he was taught under the tutelage of Gamaliel, this is where he was taught. Not in a school room somewhere, but out on the stairs at the south end of the Temple Mount. That's the southern stairs again, looking at it from a different angle. That's the southern stairs here, and there's another mosque there. This actually, interestingly enough, this mosque is more sacred than the Dome of the Rock. Because it's actually a mosque, and the Dome of the Rock is more a place to go, which I found quite interesting. Now, another prophecy that Jesus said was that he was there during the time of the Second Temple. He says, and the disciples say, "Oh, this is such a great temple, yada, 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 yada." He says, not one stone will be left upon another. AD 70, Romans come in. There's all kinds of gold inside the temple. They literally rip apart the temple to get the gold and throw the blocks over the side. There they are. So that prophecy came true. This again is another model. They seem to have quite a few models depending on where you went. This is the temple here at the south end, the western side. Now the western wall is down below on that side. It's over there, I believe. We'll get to that in a minute. This is the town. The Easter Gate was down here somewhere. So they would come up through there was actually a bridge that went across from the Mount of Olives over to there, into the Eastern Gate, into the temple. Another part of the city. That's the south end. Again, these were all buildings where religious people and activities would occur. The Western Wall. Again, as I indicated a minute ago, it's on the western side of the Temple Mount. The actual temple, first and second temples were up here. Interesting thing, the wall only used to be that high. And when the temple was gone and Jewish people wanted to worship, this is the closest place they could get to the Holy of Holies, the holiest part of the temple. A very, very sacred place. They can't go there now. Muslims haven't, they have control over the mount up here. Can't go. Closest place they can go is the Western Wall. What are they doing at the Western Wall? Well, first of all, even before you go to the Western Wall, over here, there's a place of purification. It's basically a fountain that you go to, and you wash your hands, and theoretically you should wash your feet out of respect for the area. So when you go to the temple, when you go to the Western Wall, you are ceremonially clean. Getting back to the wall, you can see the difference in type of block that is here and here. The Jewish men are over here trying to worship and have been for centuries. Problem was, they kept on getting rocks thrown at them from up here, which is not good for your health, because the rocks were not small. The Muslims were up here throwing rocks at them. The Jewish people had to actually increase the height of the wall for their own protection. And we're about 2,600 feet above sea level, which is 380 feet lower than the Mount of Olives where we were a few minutes ago. There's another shot of the Western Wall, the male part of the Western Wall. Males and females are kept separate. These here are all basically mobile.
So where do the women go?
We'll get to that.
Oh, to the right.
They're further south. These are lecterns that are used by the Orthodox Jewish men to have their prayer books and various books that they can use to recite prayers. And it's very solemn. It's a very solemn occasion for them. to go there and worship and pray. Also, I understand it's a place you can go to have your bar mitzvah. In all these cracks, to me it's very interesting, in all these cracks, well, the lower ones, where you can reach, the tradition is you take pieces of paper and you write your wish on that piece of paper. You put it in the cracks of the wall as a prayer to God. With all respect, the two most used words on those pieces of paper are me and mine, or I. Very interesting tradition. Just a bit further south, like literally right beside, there's a wall. The men are to the north, the women are to the south. Women's area is just this area here, much smaller than the men's area, but that's where women can go to worship. So you've got, that's the men's area. That's the woman's area. Same wall, same additions. Back to the Mount of Olives. This is the Garden of Gethsemane with the olive trees that are very old. These are not originals, but these are olive trees that are very, very old. And it is thought that this is the garden where Jesus went with his disciples before he went to Jerusalem. Where he said, this is going to be terrible. But if I have my way, I'm not going to Calvary. But God, it's up to you. If that's what you want, that's what's going to happen. And he went from this garden through the valley, the Jezreel Valley, to Jerusalem. Oh, still there. This is the road that goes from the Mount of Olives down into the Jezreel Valley and back up to Jerusalem. It used to be hooked up to the Eastern Gate, but it's not hooked up there anymore. Interesting thing about this road is that it was very well used, very popular road, but it was used for very specific things as well. Bethlehem is just south of Jerusalem, 5 miles south of Jerusalem. Bethlehem is significant for a number of reasons. Where was Jesus born? He was born in Bethlehem. Okay? And the interesting thing is the proper pronunciation for Bethlehem is Bethlehem, which means the house of bread. Jesus said, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will not hunger. He who believes in me will not thirst. But it was also the place where the sheep were raised for the sacrifices in the temple. Yes, there were sheep down in the temple courts, but they came from Bethlehem. They came down through this road to get to Jerusalem. Jesus said, I am the Lamb of God, which takes away the sins of the world. Now the interesting thing is that when Jesus was crucified, it was during Passover. What happened at Passover? It was one of the Moedims, Moedim Pesach, which is the Feast of Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It was required of every family to take a lamb and go to Jerusalem. This is the road that they would travel to get to Jerusalem with their lamb to be sacrificed at Passover. I always thought that when Jesus went and they put down their clothes and the palm branches and everything else, he was the only one there. I suggest to you, in my own sanctified imagination, it was really busy. It was really busy. Think of the number of people that had to come to Jerusalem to sacrifice their lamb. You know, there was so much, well, we're not going to go there. There was a lot of blood. Let's just leave it at that. But I found that very interesting, and it only was when I got back that I started to really understand what this road was. That's some more of the road. And again, the Eastern Gate you're still on the Mount of Olives here looking at the Eastern Gate. View from the Mount of Olives, again, you can see the cemeteries. Now, you can't see it in this picture. Well, let's go back here. An interesting custom that the Jewish people have, but I think possibly the Muslims may have it too. If you go to a cemetery to visit somebody, it's a very rocky area. There's some there and there's some over here. It's a very rocky area. But you have to leave a token saying that I was here, that I remembered you. So what you do is you take a stone off the ground, you put it on top of the grave. I was here, I remembered you. And I thought that was amazing. I really felt that was very special. Eastern Gate again. Now, this is just south of the south wall. This is the city of David. Now, depending on who you talk to, King David was buried down in here and may still be there. But we'll get to another picture in a couple minutes. Okay, we'll go faster. David was buried there. Some people say that David's body was picked up and put somewhere else, back into Jerusalem. Caiaphas' house is alleged to be there. And that's where Jesus potentially was put on trial. Anyways, let's go faster. That's another shot. This here is a prison underneath Jerusalem. It's a very, very low ceiling. It's very, very dark. But they think this could have been the prison that Jesus was kept in before he was crucified. And it was actually one of the reasons they think that's true is because engraved in the floor of that jail was some games. That's another shot. This guy he's tall, but you can see he's bent over.
Did you
This
say,
is Calvary.
excuse me,
This is the place that Jesus was crucified. Yeah.
did you say games?
Games. The soldiers had games. I think it was called King of the Day or something like that. It was a game that they played down there to occupy themselves, amuse themselves. Anyways, this is Calvary. This is looking at it. Calvary, it's supposed to be the place of the skull. There's supposed to be a face here, but the nose has fallen off due to erosion. Back in those times, it was like a crossroads of many traveling trails. A lot of people would go through there. Going from the Mediterranean into the eastern part or Middle East, they would go through here. Now there happens to be a bus station at the bottom of Calvary as well. That's a picture from the museum of a nail going through a piece of wood, indicative of how people were crucified. Anyways, that's how they buried people. This is a stone. This is actually in Nazareth, but this is a stone that's in a trough or a groove, and then they could roll it across and roll it back. But those tombs weren't used for a long period of time because after a year, the bones were taken out and put in an ossuary. So these are actually what we would call coffins of people. The bones are put in there and their names put on it. That is supposed to be the tomb where Jesus was laid. But he's not there. He's risen. That's a shot of that one. they changed the stone, that's just a decorative one, as opposed to a larger one. That's the dung gate where,
Your microphone.
okay, that is the shroud that is encircling King David inside Jerusalem. Anyways, let's go, that's the Pool of Siloam, we'll go real quick. That's where a guy or several people were healed of blindness. It's also the place where the ceremonial water was taken to go into the temple. That's another shot. Well, underground water chambers. There's actually a whole labyrinth of water chambers under Jerusalem, so that when they were under siege, they could still get water. They went from the Pool of Siloam to there. Well, this is Masada, which we don't have time for, other than the cable car was out the day we were there, so we had to climb. Now, the Jewish people that went there to get away from the Romans, the Romans knew they were up there and used their relatives to build that ramp. So the Romans were smart because they knew they wouldn't kill their own people. So they were able to build that ramp and siege it. Anyways, we'll go through this. There's just one more thing. Okay, now we're down in the Red Sea, near Iraq. We'll go real quick. That's Jordan. That boat sits out there, different shifts, 24 hours a day, just protecting themselves.